we put up a title which is around how can we get another trillion in dollar transaction value. Why we took that is that because if you look today at mobile payments across the world, then actually this is a very interesting picture, because it shows that actually the market for mobile payments is just dominated by China, right? And where we always feel, and where the lingo in the market always is that M-Pesa is super successful, that if you look at this big picture, actually sort of there are many lessons to be learned from China. And especially because China is so wildly different from other big economies like Europe and the US, right? Because they're dwarfed by what happens in China. So what can we actually learn from China? So what happens in China and what's different from what happens in Africa and what happens throughout the world is that sort of in Africa, sort of the launch of mobile payments has conventionally been around remittances. M-Pesa started around remittances. Many of the other mobile wallets for immigrants like Mukuru, etc., they all start around P2P payments, all remittance based. But what's happened in China is actually that a large chunk of the mobile payments, actually about 80 to 90% of it, is driven off of the success of Tencent WeChat and Alibaba Alipay. And what's different about these is that they're actually internet giants, they're big tech companies, they have an e-commerce platform, and they struggled with actually in China, with its large rural communities, with low reach, no banking penetration, etc., very similar to Africa, that they actually sort of developed solutions how on the mobile phone, because everybody's connected on mobile phone and smartphone, and Chinese people spend on average twice as much time on smartphone than people in the US. They worked out how they could convert this activity on these social networks, on the internet, into developing use cases that drive sort of a service being delivered, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's energy, and delivers that sort of with the payment integrated in it. And so basically, off of the e-commerce platform, around a number of use cases was driven a very active mobile payments infrastructure. So now, and I mean, there's slides behind this. I actually wanted to leave it at this point because I think the interesting thing of this is if you think about some of the context of Africa with low banking penetration, unmet banking needs, increased mobile phone penetration, and many of these use cases that literally have that unmet need, the question to some extent for the continent is instead of, or beyond moving from peer-to-peer payments, is there an opportunity to move to some of these more richer use cases where services come into play? And that's why I like the M-Kopa example. Obviously in Kenya where M-Pesa is so ingrained now, some of these use cases are coming into play. It's energy, there's also healthcare solutions, there are solutions for farming around use cases, different companies that come into play. The question I think really for the continent is, can we develop these rich use cases as well, where we find solutions for education, for healthcare, etc., that actually then rely on mobile phones being present and have an integrated solution for the payment.